Hey Vanity Fair, I'm Christopher Scott. Today I'll be reviewing iconic musical dance scenes in film. First up, we got In the Heights. My first step as the choreographer was really just listening to the music. So I was just playing that soundtrack on loop. It was like my biggest tool. And then from there, really the next step is just getting inside of John Chu's brain. We would just brainstorm and we just start like writing down a ton of ideas just on a whiteboard. And then as we're going through, we're just crossing them off. Ones that are like, that doesn't really work. Or we're circling the ones that's like, has to happen. The opening number specifically has a ton of like really subtle moments that are choreographed that you wouldn't really know because the actors did such a brilliant job just making them feel natural. And as a choreographer, I think it's important to do is, collaborate with your cast. And a lot of times they'll have these instincts that are perfect. So there'd be times when I would have like a whole little section when Benny comes in and it's like, Benny, let me get a Milky Way. All that stuff was like really choreographed before they even came in the room. And then as we started to go through it, we'd find little things. Sonny jumps in, you ain't got no skill, like all that stuff we just found on the spot. You really take the time that in film you feel like you don't have, but you just gotta make the time to just focus on those little details. One of the musical numbers that really I couldn't wait to get into was When the Sun Goes Down. The music couldn't be more beautiful. And this idea of Benny and Nina dancing on the side of a building. And this was such a magical moment. And I didn't really know how to do it. We didn't have the actual tools. So I was really just in a studio laying down benches in a way that could feel like the fire escape, laying down tables and we're standing on them. I mean, it was really pretty crazy. I had no idea what we were gonna end up with. And then 6 months later, when we're there shooting it, 75% of the choreography, it worked out. So it was a really gratifying moment. Corey and Leslie just did a beautiful job performing it. They were nervous. It's a lot of things. It's, you're dancing, you're singing, and you're on the side of a building that's rotating. I felt very lucky to have a musical like this where I got to showcase styles that I don't feel like has ever really been seen in a musical. Light feet, flexing, breaking, even the level of mambo. This wasn't the commercialized version of the Latin dance. This came from the street styles. The music told us to do that. It makes sense to put b-boys right here, or it makes sense to put flexors right here, or you're definitely putting mambo right here because that's what this song is telling us to do. 96,000 was like a dream number to get to work on. When we went and scouted High Bridge Pool, I mean, it was like the biggest and most beautiful, inspiring playground you could have. And then there was a moment where it's like, we don't know if we could pull it off. It's just so big. We looked at some other ideas and then it just came down to John being like, you know what? I think we just gotta figure out how to make it work. There's probably 20 routines that the world will never see because we were just playing, we were just making up stuff and we would just divide and conquer. We'd have somebody over there dancing with noodles, somebody over here dancing with floaties. And it just felt like one of those passion projects. It was just one of those moments. Just that number alone, huge shout out to those dancers. First of all, the water was freezing. One day we got completely rained out and they just kept going and they were just determined to make sure that we got this number against all these odds because that location was tricky. It was one of those things when we pulled it off and we were done, it was like, whew, now we can do anything. Next up, Grease. I got chills, they're multiplying. The lesson I learned from watching that movie was less is more because they would do some stuff and you're like, I remember them being these huge musical numbers sometimes and I would watch it and I'm like, oh no, it's just they made it larger than life because the way that they performed it, the commitment, the charm, the character, the detail, talk about detail, just the way that John Travolta's looking at her, and he goes from her face and now he's looking at her body as she's walking up the steps. Those are the things that make you just sit there and watch and you're just like, stuck to the TV. But you'll watch these groups of people and they're sitting over there and they just got a little bounce. And you see over there as they walk past these people and these people just got a little and they're all a part of this world. It reminds you that you're creating a world because we don't really live like that, unfortunately. I wish we did. I wish we all danced around the street. But so it's important to make sure that it doesn't overpower the story and it just enhances it. In that moment, there's a lot happening. They're going from breaking up to coming back together. They're evolving, they're changing. I think that's the key to a solid musical number it progresses the story. It's not just like, okay, we're story, stop, let's all dance for a second. I'm always pushing for that as a choreographer myself. When you put props, actors, lyrics, song, set design, all these things together, feels like a lot of elements that can be really challenging. I actually find it super inspiring. Like, I draw inspiration from each department, so when I have props, I actually feel sometimes like, oh great, I have another dancer that I get to play with. You can take a whole section that sometimes you can scratch your head like, what do I do here? And then it's like, well, you can do what Grease did. Throw them on a little rotating floor that says Shake Shack and just have them like vibe out with each other, have a moment, and you're just watching it with a big old smile on your face. They took us on a journey. Like Grease, you took us on a journey with that one. And now this is Teen Beach Movie.
Whoa, keeping it cool, smooth and steady. So look back here, man, things are getting heavy. You're cruising for a bruising.
Teen Beach Movie was a very special project for me because it was like I got to, pay respects to the musicals before me. So as soon as I got this opportunity, I was like, oh, I have to do this right. I have to do justice for the people who have choreographed these brilliant musicals that we're kind of replicating in this film. I wanted to make sure that the bikers gave you that feeling that I had as a kid watching West Side Story. They had to be sharp, strong, powerful. Like, I want to see those guys. That first part with John DeLuca coming through, those dancers on the side of him, they are on point. The director of the film, Jeffrey Hornaday, was a choreographer. He would push us. He would say like, iconic, just think iconic. You always want to keep this level of anticipation, I think, when you're choreographing. Having the guys spin next to John DeLuca, but then he stops one, he stops two. It's like, you don't know when they're going to stop, and then boom, and then now they're going, and then they slide through, and you don't know how they're going to get through, and they get through, and then boom, and they land. I always try my best to play with a bit of anticipation so that you can keep your audience engaged and you can keep them just glued to the screen because, you don't want anybody checking out during a musical number, especially. My first instinct is to always create something and then believe that the actors are gonna be able to figure it out somehow. They might hate me for that, but it's kind of worked every single time. So in Cruising for a Bruising, for example, like John DeLuca, he'd never really danced before. So, I created the movement that fit well for him, and I took advantage of what his strengths were. So you'll notice there's a point where he does a little pec pop. He's got the pecs. It was really fun. It was one of my favorite little moments in the thing. But then I found out that he's a tumbler, like a phenomenal tumbler. That's really him flipping all over that place. It's kind of just been my way, and it's worked so far, so. Next up, we got the amazing Stormy Weather. Tap was such a huge thing in all these musicals back in the day because these performers were at an incredible level. I mean, it's actually really hard to find these days. I mean, they exist, don't get me wrong, these dancers are out there. But, to find another Gene Kelly, Nicholas Brothers, these guys were, just every day doing this. I mean, I think tap is such an incredible art form. They're basically playing an instrument while moving you with their dance postures and everything. When I was a kid, I just gravitated towards it. I started dancing late, and I found tap in high school, and I never looked back. It really is the gateway that got me into dance. It's not hard to tell you why the Nicholas Brothers are so special, because I feel like when you watch them, it's just right in your face. They were like the epitome of style. Connection is a really important thing. When I do duets, the first thing we try to nail down is to make sure that the performers have a connection. When you're brothers, that connection is deep. And when you see them look at each other in the middle of a dance and just like boom, and they come up from the splits and they're looking at each other, you feel like you're in a little moment with them. These are the type of geniuses that you give them a set like that. I wish I could have been there on the day that they were working that stuff out. I always think to myself, I'm like that little slide in the middle. I'm like, did they say like, you know what, we just want to slide? And like, well, you're only gonna use it once? Like, we don't have the money for that. And they were just like, nah, trust me, it'll be worth it. Like, that's what I think about every time they're going down that slide in the splits and they come up and the number's over. I'm like, that was worth every penny. This clip is Singin' in the Rain. I can only imagine what they went through back then to make that element work. One of my first dance moments on film was Step Up 2, Dancing in the Rain. And it did a couple things. One, it made it really difficult to dance, but two, it made it so easy to like feel so good doing it. And I think that's what ends up being the driving force. I was definitely thinking about Gene Kelly in that moment. He looks so in love, and that's what that moment is about. And I always wondered, you know, if for him it's that moment of just loving what he gets to do for a living and loving dance and the water and just having the scene. He channeled something, because I think that's why it hits home for so many people. It's like, you got the rain, you got the thing, but seeing a man in love like that, it just, you know, what are you gonna do? No, 100% had inspiration from Singing in the Rain for 96,000 in the pool. It's so funny because Gene Kelly, he's doing this beautiful dance, and then he has a moment where he's just kind of splashing around, and that's like one of my favorite moments because just how beautiful it looks. Like, I don't want to put these dancers in water if I'm not going to get to see some splashing, you know? So that whole end scene had a lot of little Singing in the Rain in the back of my mind. Gene Kelly, we watched him fall in love, and rain was such a huge part of that because it was like, okay, normally you put the umbrella up, but he's so in love, it's like, I don't even care. And then on In the Heights, it was like, you know, this dream of like 96,000, and you put it in water and Corey's going through the rain, he's thinking of 96,000, you know? When you look at the two side by side, there's a lot of similarities. Very different numbers. We had, I think, 90 dancers in that pool, and Singing in the Rain's just one guy, but the bones of what's happening are really similar. All right, everybody out there, so do me a favor, I need one favor when you're watching In the Heights. I really want you guys to pay attention to the details. Watch it once to enjoy, and then go back, rewind, watch the background. Thank you so much, Vanity Fair, for having me, and I'll see you next time.